Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the Quarantine Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The United States confirmed nearly 90,000 new cases of coronavirus Thursday, the worst toll of the U.S. epidemic so far, with an average of one new infection every second of the day. 43 states are seeing cases rise, with 17 states breaking records for hospitalizations and 8 states reporting record daily cases. This is Dr. Ashish Jha, Dean of Brown University's School of Public Health.
Well, things are very, very bad in the United States right now. We are having some of the largest outbreaks that we've had during the entire pandemic. And 9-10 months into this pandemic, we are still largely not quite prepared.
In Texas, El Paso County has ordered a 2-week lockdown of non-essential businesses as a surge of COVID-19 patients has left medical workers overwhelmed and hospitals nearing capacity. Meanwhile, the Washington Post reports over 40,000 residents have died of COVID-19 in nursing homes that were given a clean bill of health by the Trump administration. The Post found the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services cleared nearly 8 out of 10 nursing homes of any infection control violations, even homes with mounting coronavirus outbreaks before or during the inspections. President Trump and Joe Biden held competing campaign rallies just miles apart Thursday in the battleground state of Florida, which is also a red zone hotspot for the coronavirus. Biden held a drive-in rally in Tampa where supporters were required to wear masks and to practice social distancing.
Donald Trump refuses to listen to science. And we shouldn't be politicizing the race for a vaccine. We should be planning for its safe use and free and equitable distribution, providing PPE for national standards for schools, businesses to open safely. I laid out a plan back in May how to do that.
Just 10 miles away, President Trump spoke to a crowd of thousands of mostly unmasked supporters who rallied shoulder to shoulder on the day the U.S. shattered its record for new coronavirus infections. Trump promised the country would remain open for business no matter what.
We're never going to lock down again. We locked down, we understood the disease, and now we're open for business, and that's what it is.
Trump's rally came as the U.S. death toll from COVID-19 topped 228,000, with over 9 million confirmed cases since March.
You know the bottom line, though? You're going to get better. You're going to get better. If I can get better, anybody can get better, and I got better fast.
Nearly a dozen Trump supporters at Thursday's rally in Tampa were hospitalized after waiting for hours in the searing heat and humidity. From the podium, Trump mocked firefighters who sprayed the crowd with water to help cool people off.
They may be doing that on purpose. Let's find out if they're friend or foe, and if they're foe, let's take care of those son of a bitches.
This follows 7 hospitalizations for hypothermia that followed a Trump rally in Omaha, Nebraska Tuesday evening after the Trump campaign failed to provide enough buses for supporters who were left waiting in freezing cold for hours until midnight. Meanwhile, a CNN study finds 82% of counties where President Trump held a campaign rally experienced a surge in COVID-19 cases afterwards. In Pennsylvania, new data from the U.S. Postal Service show on-time mail delivery plummeted over the last 2 weeks, even as Pennsylvania saw a record number of ballots cast by mail. In Philadelphia, about 42% of first-class mail took 5 days or longer to be delivered, compared to just 13% in January. Meanwhile, election officials in Pennsylvania's Butler County say thousands of mail-in ballots requested by voters appear to have been lost in the mail. In Minnesota, a federal judge has ordered election officials to set aside mail-in ballots that arrive after November 3rd, paving the way for the ballots to be invalidated, even if they were postmarked by Election Day. The ruling overturns an order by Minnesota's Secretary of State requiring ballots received within 7 days of the election to be counted. In Michigan, a state appeals court Thursday upheld an order allowing the open carry of firearms at polling places. The ruling invalidates an order by Michigan's Attorney General that banned the display of weapons within 100 feet of polling sites. In Philadelphia, family members of Walter Wallace Jr. said Thursday they do not want the officers who fatally shot the 27-year-old to face murder charges. Family attorney Shaka Johnson said the officers were not properly trained, did not have the right equipment to do their jobs properly. Shaka Johnson reviewed body camera footage of the killing, which is set to be publicly released next week. He says it shows Wallace threatening officers with a knife, but also that Wallace was incapacitated as soon as he was struck by the first of 14 shots fired by 2 officers.
What other than death did you intend when you shoot a man, each officer, 7 times apiece?
Protests against Wallace's killing continue in Philadelphia and across the United States. On Thursday, Philadelphia's City Council passed a ban on the use of tear gas, rubber-coated bullets, and other so-called less lethal weaponry on people exercising their First Amendment rights. The Trump administration's quietly ended a civil rights investigation into the police killing of 12-year-old Tamir Rice in 2014. The New York Times reports the Justice Department ignored pleas by career prosecutors to open a grand jury probe into Rice's killing for more than 2 years before denying the request in 2019. In 2014, Cleveland police officer Timothy Lohman shot Rice within 2 seconds of arriving at a park where Rice was playing with a pellet gun. When Tamir's 14-year-old sister rushed to her brother's side, they tackled her to the ground, handcuffed her, and put her in their cruiser. Tamir Rice died the next day. Neither officer was prosecuted or fired over the killing. In immigration news, the House Judiciary Committee has found the Trump administration knew it would not be able to reunite children separated from their parents at the U.S.-Mexico border, but enforced the practice anyway. The report published Thursday is the first complete narrative of Trump's zero-tolerance policy, which has separated over 2,500 children from their families, including babies and kids with mental and physical disabilities. House Democrats warned hundreds of children will likely never be reunited with their parents and described the practice as being plagued with, quote, reckless incompetence and intentional cruelty. The committee spent nearly 2 years investigating the policy. The immigrant rights organization Project South, alongside other legal groups, is suing Immigration and Customs Enforcement for failing to turn over records of non-consensual medical procedures performed on immigrant prisoners, including invasive gynecological surgeries and forced sterilizations at the Irwin Detention Center in Georgia. The Intercept reports at least 57 women may have undergone aggressive and unnecessary gynecological procedures at the privately owned prison since 2018. To watch our interview with one of the survivors, go to democracynow.org. In California, the family of David Villalobos, a 30-year-old immigrant from Mexico who was killed by Border Patrol last week in the town of San Isidro, is demanding an independent investigation into his fatal shooting. Villalobos was attempting to return to the U.S. to be reunited with his child and family when he was confronted by Border Patrol agents who shot him in the chest. His family says he had developmental challenges. Villalobos had been living in the U.S. since he was a child and was deported several years ago. In more immigration news, The Guardian reports the Trump administration significantly increased deportations to Haiti in the weeks before the presidential election, triggering concerns for the safety of asylum seekers and the possible spread of coronavirus to Haiti. The watchdog group Witness at the border has recorded at least 12 deportation flights to Haiti this month. This comes as immigrant advocates say black asylum seekers are being disproportionately targeted. Earlier this month, 60 Cameroonian and over 24 Congolese asylum seekers were deported en masse, many alleging ICE agents tortured them to force them to sign removal papers. In Mexico, nearly 60 bodies have been found in a clandestine mass graves in the state of Guanajuato. Officials with the National Search Committee say most of the bodies belong to young people, including teens. Violence has skyrocketed in Guanajuato due to wars between drug cartels since the Mexican government launched its so-called war on drugs in 2006. About 250,000 people have been killed. Nearly 40,000 are still missing. Over 3,000 clandestine graves have been discovered. In Yemen, the watchdog monitoring group Air Wars says U.S. drone strikes have killed as many as 154 civilians since President Trump took office, including at least 28 children, accelerating a trend that began under President Obama. Air Wars found that in less than 4 years, the Trump administration targeted Yemen for over 230 airstrikes or ground raids, nearly the same total as during 8 years under Obama. Millions of Yemenis face famine after years of a brutal U.S.-backed Saudi-led bombing campaign that's devastated Yemen. In the United Kingdom, the Labour Party has suspended former leader Jeremy Corbyn after he disagreed with some of the conclusions of a government report on anti-Semitism in the Labour Party. Corbyn has promised to strongly contest his suspension. In response, peace activist Medea Benjamin of Code Pink wrote, quote, UK Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn has spent his life fighting racism and defending the rights of the oppressed, including Palestinians. He's always opposed anti-Semitism, but anti-Semitism is being weaponized to suspend him from the party. Sad, Medea Benjamin wrote. The Trump administration's largely stopped auditing the wealthiest U.S. residents. That's according to the journalist David K. Johnston, editor-in-chief of D.C. Reports. Johnston spoke with Democracy Now! About his findings.
Donald Trump has done an enormous favor to the 24,000 richest families in America. They make about $30 million a year each. And you know how many of them had their tax returns audited? 7. Not 700 or 7,000. 7.
David K. Johnston's report finds that under President Obama in 2015, the country's richest households were 270 times more likely to be audited than under Trump. In media news, the Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Glenn Greenwald has resigned from The Intercept after accusing the news outlet of censoring an article he wrote about Joe Biden. Greenwald, who co-founded The Intercept, accused editors of refusing to, quote, publish the article unless I agree to remove all of the sections critical of the candidate they want to win. Greenwald's article focused on disputed corruption allegations about Biden's son Hunter that first appeared in the New York Post. In a statement, The Intercept said in part, while he accuses us of political bias, it was he who was attempting to recycle the dubious claims of a political campaign, the Trump campaign, and launder them as journalism, they said. The Trump administration says it's ending endangered species protections for the gray wolf, saying a scattered population of 6,000 wolves across the U.S. is enough to save the species. The Natural Resources Defense Council blasted the decision, writing in a statement, quote, as we face a biodiversity crisis of global proportions, it's imperative for us to recognize that this isn't just about wolves. The fate of humanity is intertwined with the fate of species and healthy ecosystems, unquote. And longtime peace and justice activist Ted Glick is continuing a month-long hunger strike ahead of the presidential election as he hopes to encourage undecided voters to support Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden. Glick launched a hunger strike on October 3rd and will conclude it on Election Day. He spoke to Democracy Now! Last night.
I'm on day 27 of what will end up being a 32-day fast to defeat Trump. I've lost 30 pounds so far. I'm doing this to underline the urgency of our situation and how people who get it on how bad Trump is, they need to vote for Biden in the battleground states in particular. We need to stand up now for our rights, our people, our climate, and doing it by getting Trump out of there.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The Quarantine Report. I'm Amy Goodman.